Despite having reached armistice agreements with all of its neighbors, in the early 50s, Israelis could hardly feel safe. Israel had long, porous borders, especially with Jordan. As a result, marauders would constantly enter and steal from and often murder Israelis. In 1951, 137 Israelis were killed or wounded, a number that grew to 147 in 1952 and 180 in 1953. In response, the Israeli government ordered the military to undertake retaliatory raids on Jordanian towns. Initially, the army did not seem up to the task, until it was decided to form an elite unit called Unit 101, 101, under the command of young Ariel Sharon. The operations it conducted persuaded the Jordanians to try to rein in the cross-border raids. The unit was so successful that a decision was made to merge it into the paratroop division under Sharon's command. The goal, turning the entire paratroop division into an elite force. During this period, the Israeli army also clashed with the Syrians, primarily over draining the Hula swamp, and the Egyptian army over the creation of a Nachal settlement in the demilitarized zone. Some of the deaths hit harder than others. Moshe Dayan, then chief of staff of the army, gave a eulogy for Ro'i Rothenberg, the security chief of Kibbutz Nachal Oz on the Gaza border. In part, he said, "Early yesterday morning, Ro'i was murdered. The quiet of the spring morning dazzled him, and he did not see those waiting in ambush for him at the edge of the furrow. Let us not cast blame on the murderers today. Why should we declare their burning hatred for us? For 8 years they have been sitting in refugee camps in Gaza, and before their eyes we have been transforming the land and the villages where they and their fathers dwelt into our estate. It is not among the Arabs in Gaza, but in our own midst that we must seek Ro'i's blood. How do we shut our eyes and refuse to look squarely at our fate and see in all the brutality the destiny of our generation? Have we forgotten this group of young people dwelling at Nachal Oz is bearing the heavy gates of Gaza on its shoulders? While Israelis, especially those living closer to the borders, were most concerned about security, during the early 50s, Israelis continued to struggle with shortages of food and other basic supplies. The German reparation agreement, whose passage had led to riots in the streets of Jerusalem, had begun to positively impact Israel's economy. However, emotions relating to the Holocaust remained raw, and they were not limited to reparations. In 1954, a proceeding known as the Kastner Trial focused on whether Rudolf Kastner would work to save the Jews of Hungary had in fact collaborated with the Nazis. A lower court concluded that he had, which led to his assassination in 1957. The next year, Kastner was exonerated by Israel's Supreme Court. The Soviet Union had initially supported the establishment of the State of Israel, and Golda Meir was warmly welcomed to Moscow as Israel's first ambassador. However, in the early 50s, as Israel's ties with the United States and West Germany strengthened, and blatant anti-Semitic acts took place in the communist countries of Europe, the ties between Israel and the Soviet Union became strained. The Soviets broke diplomatic ties with Israel after a bomb was thrown at the Soviet embassy in Tel Aviv. They re-established them 6 months later. Israel also welcomed its second Prime Minister Moshe Sharon. David Ben Gurion stunned the nation and resigned to become a pioneer himself by moving to Sde Boker, deep in the Negev. Ben Gurion believed the future of the country lay in the Negev. The voluntary retirement would last less than 2 years.